Today, I'm speaking with David Norris, one of our guest facilitators, about the next upcoming program, Being in Business, a 3-day workshop, which looks at people's relationship with their world of work. David, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
So let's just dive straight in because the Being in Business program is coming up shortly. I just wondered if you could give us an idea of what the program is and really where it came from. What was the genesis of it?
Well, maybe it's easier to start with the second question first. What's the genesis of it? For a long time, I was working with people, leading courses, coaching, consulting, and the focus of my work was basically make it happen. How do you get it to happen? How do you coach people or work with people to support them in making their goals come true? And the general approach, really, to put it very bluntly, was how to dominate life so you could get what you want. So words like commitment would come into play. If you were really committed enough, well, that would be important. If you were really organized enough, well, that's certainly important. If you were really disciplined enough, and so on. And there's a whole catechism of categories to essentially support people in getting life to do what they want. And, and there were many people doing that, and I was one of them, working with people doing that. But there was always something that bothered me about it, and I could never put my finger on quite what it was. And as time went on, and maybe as I got older, I began to have this, I guess, intuition, this sense that really the whole basis of the way I was working with people rested on my view of life. And I began to consider the possibility that maybe I could look at the whole thing from life's point of view about me, which was a rather strange thought at the time, but the more I sat with it, the more real it got. And I began to realize more and more that I was part of life, and so was everybody else. And this basically antagonistic relationship that we have in the service of reaching our goals. Now, nothing wrong with the goals, nothing wrong with reaching goals, but there was something so antagonistic between people and life in order to make things happen. So I began to ask myself, is there another way to look at this whole thing? Is there another basis from which to come, which is maybe not so antagonistic in the relationship with life? And that brought me step by step to a fundamental questioning about what is work. Not just goals, but what is work, inside of which goals usually occur. Also in personal life, but let's just stay with the field of work. Step by step, out of that fundamental re-questioning about my own relationship to life, I asked myself, could there be a way of being with life that took the antagonism out of it and brought a lot more satisfaction in the process of realizing one's wishes or one's goals or one's self? Mm-hmm. And that's really what brought me fundamentally to the whole course. And then it was just a question of trying things out, exploring different ways of approaching it until I finally got to the course that I now lead.
Right. And so what is your approach that differs from maybe, because there's probably a world of workshops that are about coaching and still maintain that sort of antagonistic relationship. So what would you say the difference is between that and your approach in Being in Business now?
Well, I suppose it all boils down to one shift, one fundamental shift, but it's so fundamental. It's going to sound simple when I say it. It's not so simple to do. It's easy, perhaps easier to explain, but not so easy to live. But it's that one fundamental shift which is the heart of my whole approach and which is the heart of the Being in Business program. And that one fundamental shift is a shift from my understanding of the word promise. Normally, the word promise in the work area is essentially what you are promising to do. I promise to do whatever I have to deliver these results, Mr. Boss. And for that, you will pay me. And so there's a deal we make. I make promises to you, and you compensate me for the effort that I put into fulfilling on my promises. I began to shift my understanding of the word promise from something that I'm promising to do, so from a doing, to an understanding of promise as a being. Hence, by the way, the title of the course, Being in Business. In other words, the promise that I am being, so promise as in who I am being, as opposed to what I'm doing. Now that sounds a little esoteric, so may I read you something? It's just 3 or 4 sentences, which I do use in the course and which very important to me in the way I ultimately designed the course. Mm-hmm. This is just a couple of sentences. It's common to say that trees come from seeds. But how could a tiny seed create a huge tree? Seeds do not contain the resources needed to grow a tree. These must come from the medium or environment within which the tree grows. But the seed does provide something that is crucial, a place where the whole of the tree starts to form. As resources such as water and nutrients are drawn in, the seed organizes the process that generates growth. In a sense, the seed is a gateway. The seed is a gateway. That was the key word for me. The seed is a gateway through which the future possibility of the living tree emerges. Mm-hmm. So when I say the promise that I mean discovering myself as the gateway for life to emerge. It requires a totally different understanding of what a human being is from a something that makes promises to do to a gateway, promise as gateway or space. You could say that the seed is the promise of a tree.
Right, yeah.
You see? And I say that a human being is the promise of a future being lived. Mm-hmm. of a world emerging, if you will. Go ahead.
So yeah, I was just going to ask. So does that mean, is that sort of almost like people are finding what might be referred to as a calling?
Yes.
You're getting closer to that in the program.
Absolutely, and it's people are very reluctant to believe that they could possibly have a calling. Right. It sounds too grandiose.
Right. Yeah.
And part of the work of the course is for people to trust themselves enough to listen for the calling that's calling them. And it's been my experience that everybody has a calling, as in everybody is a gateway for something.
Right.
And so the course is essentially a discovering of what that something is. And it's been my experience working with lots of people now that it takes that antagonistic relationship. Once you find the gateway, once you discover the promise that you are and connect to it experientially, not just conceptually, but experientially, then that takes the antagonistic relationship out of life. Instead of trying to make it happen, it's more the allowing it to flow through you.
Right, that's quite a shift, that I guess some people have to go through in terms of how they see their work.
That's right. And also how they see themselves.
Yeah, right. I see. And so without saying too much about what you do, could you say something about the process of this 2.5 day program?
Well, let's see. There is, in order to make this shift, because that's it, the whole program is that one shift. As I said, easy to say, not so easy to do. Mm-hmm. But in order to make this one shift, there's like a step ladder of distinctions which step by step allow someone to shift their relationship to their work and to themselves. And the two go together. Work and myself are two sides of the same coin, and there's a shift in the relationship to that. So there's first of all a step ladder of distinctions that allows that to be something that's not just conceptually understood, but experientially felt. And it's only when you connect to the gateway that you are, the promise that you are, that you can, that something really shifts, as opposed to understanding that something could shift. And that's the last day of the course. So the first, it's a 2.5-day program. It starts on Friday evening at 7 o'clock, goes to 11, and then Saturday and Sunday it's 9 in the morning till I believe 8 o'clock in the evening. And the Friday evening and Saturday is this step ladder of distinctions, and then Sunday, pretty much all day, not all day, but almost all day, is working with people individually, one at a time, as they stand up in front of the room and discover their calling experientially. I work with them until they kind of jump through the eye of the needle one at a time.
Wow. And that must be quite a magical experience to be, because there's a difference between, as you say, it's sort of intellectually knowing something and experientially, yes. Because it sounds like it's what's coming from them rather than that people are sitting there making a decision about what they want this calling to be. It's kind of what's already there, but you're just discovering it.
Precisely.
Right.
It's not all the great things you thought you should be, because it sounds so noble. It's who you are and always have been, and when you have the courage to connect to it, you know it, because you know you've always been that. And then the only question after that is, how are you going to express who you are?
Right.
So that work becomes an opportunity for self-expression rather than a place you go to exchange time for money.
And I should imagine that for some people that does mean changing their job or their work. But for some people, it's probably just about coming from a different place in the same environment that they're already in. Would that be true?
Yeah, absolutely. A few people do change their line of work, in some cases really dramatically so, but that's very few. Mm-hmm. Most people don't change their line of work, but they change their relationship to work. Mm-hmm. And in the changed relationship to their work, same job, but it's a different experience of going to work.
Okay. And so where are people at if they're coming into being in business? What sort of things will be going on with them that would attract them to a program like this?
Well, it'll be many different places. Some people are clear they're dissatisfied with their work, with their job, and they're either looking for a totally new line of work, or and they might have something in mind, but they're not quite sure about it. Other people are dissatisfied, but they're not looking for another line of work. They're just looking for a different way to go to work. They just know something's off, but they don't know what it is. But they like their work, but something's not working for them about it. Maybe this is the third or fourth job they've been to in the last 3 or 4 years, and they know something's not working, but they don't know what. And then there'll be other people who are happy where they are, and they're in the right line of work, and they're at the right place of business, and yet there's so much effort in the way they're working. It's something that they like doing. They don't want a different line of work. They're in the right place, but their relationship to it has that antagonistic relationship. Which leads to stress and an enormous amount of effort. And they don't know exactly what is off or what they can do about it, but that's what they want to explore. Mm-hmm. So people in all different kinds of places. There's always 1 or 2 people, in fact, who are unemployed at the moment, and they're not sure they're in the right place. And I tell them, look, if you're interested in having a work life, this is the right place.
Right, okay, that makes sense. I forgot what I was going to ask you. Because I remember going the very first time. I've done the program twice, and the first time I was just acting, and I remember seeing a man in a suit who had registered for the program, and I got really upset because I was like, I don't have any business, because that's what I'd imagined business was. So it feels as though there's a sort of a possibility of empowerment and kind of taking ownership of your world of work as well, like by doing the program, even if you stay in the same environment, that you
Absolutely.
can kind of own being there now.
And own, even more than own being there, is own who you are being there. Because remember, it's both sides of the coin. It's you and work. It's when you connect to the promise you are, work occurs totally differently for you because you occur totally different for you.
Right. Excellent. Well, David, thank you so much. It's really clear now what the program is. And so at the end of this video, I'll put some details of when the next program is so that people can register if they're interested.
Right.
Thank you again for your time. It was great to hear more about being in business.
Oh, that's it, huh?
Yeah, that was it. Unless there's more you want to add.
No. That's